Okay, it sounds like we're all set. Thank you for your patience on that. I'm excited to introduce Brandon Gaskin. Brandon is deaf. He is the founder and executive director of Deaf Millennial Project, an organization inspiring generations of deaf believers to radically follow, apply, and practice the life of Christ. Deaf Millennial Project develops digital biblical content, events, and resources in American Sign Language that expose the message of the gospel to deaf people and impact the local church. It is Brandon's desire to see a gospel movement happen within the deaf community. He has joined the Converge Deaf Catalyst team to train up new deaf leaders and equip the global church to make deaf disciple makers. You can often find Brandon exploring new coffee shops or walking his dog at the park. Welcome Brandon with me.
I was just testing that, making sure that the slides work. So good morning, everyone. The topic of today is going to be talking about integrating deafness into the church body. We know that the church congregation as a whole is very broad, but there's and it's very impressive. But we need to know what kind of a church looks like and what ministry truly looks like. We know that it can be vast or it can be small. There's different ways to have people invited. So I do have a question. I want to pose a question to all of you. I would like you to raise your hand if you've ever actually attended a church for like the first time when you walk into a church and when the church finishes and you've left and you've never gone back to that church. Raise your hand if you've never gone back to a church you've attended. And first impressions when attending a church are crucial. Now, it's hard to imagine, but imagine being a deaf individual. Imagine their thoughts. Imagine what that thought is going to be like. They have to now take that first impression and add to it and say, is anyone going to actually try and talk to me? Is there actually going to be an interpreter? Will I understand what's going to be said? Where will I be able to actually find a seat? Will I feel normal? Or are people going to ostracize me or try and make gestures to me? So there's a lot of layers that deaf individuals face when actually attending a church. And a lot of deaf individuals have very similar stories where they attend a church and there's not an interpreter. No one even tried to even talk to them. No one tried to form any kind of communication gestures to actually build a relationship with them. Some make the decisions to stay in those churches. And then it poses the question, what do you do in those moments? If a deaf person becomes a member of your church, what can you do? This is honestly one of the first things that we have to take the time to recognize. Accessibility and inclusiveness is a matter of justice and love. Not only that, it's biblical. It's not something that you can neglect and pretend it's going to go away. This is something that is critical. We can't put the deaf individuals into a corner and be like, all right, you guys are going to stay here, we're good. They still have to be outreached to. If you look throughout Scripture, we see so many times Scripture is talking about relationships that led to change. When the deaf experience inclusiveness, transformation truly will happen. Without any form of inclusiveness, the transformation will not happen. One example is during my time at college, I went to a church. They did not actually have an interpreter. They didn't have any form of deaf ministry. And I was one of the first deaf individuals within that church. It was me and a couple of friends. We actually went to this church but we continued to attend this church. And we talked to the church pastors, and the church let us interpret. So my friends would interpret. And then that actually spread within the deaf community. And so we had a lot of deaf community members start attending. And so come Christmas time, one of the leaders actually approached me, and they said, so your ministry during this Christmas break, when you actually go home for Christmas, once you guys come back from Christmas, we are going to essentially have this platform and have everything built for these interpreters. So we're planning to have this ministry. And so I was like, oh, okay, understanding what's going to happen. So during college, we went home for Christmas break, and coming back, we went back to the church. There was nothing new that was told to us. So I went to the leader and I said, remember, you had told me you were planning to do all of these things after this Christmas break. When we came back, we would have more or less a ministry platform. And the pastor was like, oh yeah, this happened and this happened. And that really hurt us as the deaf community. And a lot of us left that church, because there was no way for continuing any form of spiritual growth. This is one situation that happened. So after that experience, for about 2 months, I actually didn't attend that church. I typically stayed home or in my college dormitory, and I would watch certain things online for services. And I had a friend texted me and said, hey, you're up, come to church with me. And I was like, no, I'm just going to stay here. I really don't want there not to be any interpreters, me not to understand the message. And my friend was like, I'm here at your door right now. Come on, we're going. So I was like, all right. So I got up. We went to, and we were going to church. And I was like, I know this is not going to have any interpreters. I know I'm not really going to get anything from the message. There's not going to be nothing for me. So we got to church, and upon me sitting down with my friend was like, give it a chance. And so I was like, So the lady that was a couple rows in front of us saw that I was signing with my friend, and immediately she turned around and started interpreting. And so I was like, they have interpreters here? And my friend's like, yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. So not only that, after the church, I met the pastor. By the way, the pastor also signed. And so I started attending and becoming members of this church. And the more I was involved with membership, the more the congregation started to learn sign language, so I could feel that spiritual transformation, because I had this sense of belonging at this church. I was included. I was actually recognized as a human being. And that is something that a lot of deaf people don't always get during their church experience. They're not recognized as this human being, because there's a deaf culture. There's a deafness that is brought with this. And so when you have this connectivity to a church, this is where transformation can truly happen. And that transformation really stems from being intentional with individuals. When you're looking at deaf people and they're included, it's going to truly transform just your entire church, not just where the deafness is. Sorry, I noticed an error, John chapter 13, verse 135. It's actually not 135, it's just verse 35. And it says, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. How we treat people, how we approach them, how we build relationships with them prove that we are his disciples. And if people around the world look at the church, there's a sense of hurt or oppression or not even realizing that some of these are there, because there are people that don't want a relationship with God because they've seen what's happened with the church. We need to be the catalyst for change. We need to transform our approach. We need to be willing to be uncomfortable for the greater good of his kingdom, to look at desiring relationships, to know that different languages have different cultures, and look at what that can be as a ministry aspect. Maybe attending a different country. Maybe you speak English and you're attending a country that speaks Spanish, but proving to them that you're willing to take the time to learn, to have communication, to learn that culture, or even try to learn that culture. That needs to be applied here in our own backyard. Our ministry mindset needs to change. We don't do it for the deaf. We need to do it with the deaf. We need to change that. We're doing it for them to doing it with them. We're talking about a greater community, a disabled community, or a community with disabilities. We need to do it with them to provide a change. And so when we look at what we can do, we want to talk about what some of the easy steps that the church, any church can do. And the first thing really is just be involved in a process. We're talking about the ministry mindset change from doing it for to doing it with, which truly means they need a seat at our table. To initiate these conversations and how we can have dialogues with people who are deaf, you need to invite a deaf person. If you're not sure how to set up an interpreter or hire an interpreter, bring in the deaf people. They can start sharing their experiences with you that they have with interpreters, with accessibility. If you're not sure about how this will look like with worship, bring deaf people to the table. That is one approach that we've taken, and we've seen the success rate for this. It is critical that we empower the community that we're looking to bring a part of our church. Secondly, we need to look at it truly is just training the staff members. Remember, when you go into a church, that first impression is really important. And there's a lot of churches that have a lot of similarities, and they have greeters, they have people that make you feel welcome, and to show that we're happy you're here. Why don't you teach your staff just some of the basics in ASL, just to say hi in ASL, to sign happy that you're here. Welcome to our church. Just some of the simple signs. And just, the interpreter's over here, come follow me. Engage with those individuals. They're seeing you engage with them, and it's going to transform their perspective on you and how they perceive this church. They're going to see, wow, this church took the time to engage with me, to make me feel included. I don't have to do all of this extra work to try and teach, to fight just to have rights, just to have access. That they can actually take a breath, and so that they can realize, I feel at home here, and spiritual transformation can start right there. Thirdly, we need to look at the inclusivity in worship. They need to be a part of this. When staff from churches ask deaf to be a part of the worship, it's transformative. Not to be, we're going to push you off to the side, but to be on the stage while worship is going on. You're going to transform just the church at a whole. Seeing that deaf individuals are invited is going to cause relationships being built within families. You're going to see a more unified church body. And over time, people are going to be more inviting and say, we have a ministry. Why don't you come? And they're going to be more open-minded to seeing the transformation happen at a church level. Not just an individual, but a church body. Fourthly, we need to look at bringing deaf leaders on staff. We need to look at volunteers. We need to look at empowering the deaf individuals so that they can see how the church wants to work with them, so that it changes the mindset of the church. It can change the mindset of the individuals, and you can see the discipleship. You can see the growth, and you can see the spiritual challenges becoming spiritual abilities, because they're overcoming all of these challenges. And over time, we've seen historically, we'll try and work out a discipleship. We'll try and work out something for this. When you have deaf leaders there, you see the immediacy, and it's just amazing. I'm actually involved in one of the oldest churches in the U.S. The deaf church that I'm a part of has been running for over 100 years. We've truly experienced a lot of obstacles with the congregation of leaders. And I want to say in the past 6 to 7 months, we've experienced so many breakthroughs, both spiritual and physical breakthroughs. With the church that can hear, the greater church, we have actually been brought on, they've hired on an interpreter full time to follow around that pastor so he can actually interact with his entire congregation. He can approach those individuals, and he's wanting to empower the deaf community even more by involving with them. But the budget from that is not actually against the deaf budget, it's against the church budget. So they're accruing that cost. These are some other practical tips that could actually be taken as well. When you're talking about a congregation wanting to be more diverse, when you're putting out all these promotional videos, caption your videos and caption your sermons. Including captionings in all of your videos just opens up how much more accessible it is. If there are no captions, all of the deaf community loses the ability to hear your message. They're missing out on scripture. They're missing out on connecting to Christ. We're looking at 70 million deaf people around the world, and you're looking at about 98% that do not have access. There's over 2 million deaf individuals alone, and the vast majority of those individuals don't have access to the gospel. Deaf individuals and the deaf group are one of the most unreached people groups, and that's in our own backyard. We need to bring on staff interpreters. I know it's not one size fits all in regards to interpreters and bringing on staff, but we can be aggressive in ministry. We can look and we can take the time on how to research. We can use Google to research to figure out how we can bring on interpreters. I mean, there's resources at our fingertips. Secondly, we need to look at relationships. Or thirdly, we need to look at fostering relationships so that we can develop these relationships so that can in turn bring in more discipleships. We need to create some deaf-friendly events that's going to truly impact the deaf community as well. It's not always just about accessibility. It's about inclusivity. Providing access to all events, all conferences, everything that we do. It's not just a Sunday morning, we go home. We need it to be available Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every day of the week. Every time we have every ministry event, we need to make sure that we're including and being accessible to all. We shouldn't have to burden those individuals that need these services. We should create this a frustration-free zone so they can come and relax. I really want to thank you guys for the opportunity for me to be here. And doing some of these simple steps, you will truly start to see a difference in your ministry. These small steps will infect you as a whole. Again, I really want to thank you guys for letting me to be here.